Good evening. Sorry we're running a little bit late. I apologize to all of you. We are now at the public participation on agenda items of this meeting. Pursuant to board policy, public participation is limited to 5 minutes per speaker, for a total of 30 minutes for all speakers. There's a timer in the front of the room that will keep track of your time. The timer will begin when you start to address the board. Please direct your comments to the entire board and not individual members. If you have any questions regarding public comment, please refer to the public comment procedure form that is available by the sign-in sheet. Public participation is not a question and answer session with the board. If you would like an answer to your question, please submit your request in writing to the board clerk. Would anybody like to address the board on agenda items? I guess everybody wants to watch the Mets tonight, huh? Okay. Then we'll move on. Thank you. The first agenda items are mine. Resolution to adopt district goals. I'd like to entertain a motion.
Second.
Can we have discussion, please? Mr. Johnston?
I'd like to suggest a rewording of goal number 3 to say,
Board members, you have that in front of you.
to say improve grading and writing achievement of all students pre-K through grade 12.
Any feelings about that? Would you like to make that change? Put that in? Mr. Stridarn?
I agree with Mr. Johnson on that item, and I'd like to add another item to number 4 at the end where it says improving equity across the district. I'd like to add another item, which is the third item, and that would say ensuring fairness of provisioning of educational resources for all groups.
Can you repeat that, please, Mr. Stridarn?
Ensuring fairness of provisioning of educational resources to all groups. Make sure it's done.
Thank you. I'd like to have a motion on to amend this resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Now discussion, please.
I just have a clarification on what that.
Just basically, we have different programs in different schools, but we want to make sure that the resources that we have as a district, when it comes to budgeting, spending money, that each group within schools or is treated equally, that there's equity. There's not one group that's singled out and gets more resources than others. We have to have that mindset at least. We try to do the best we can to ensure equity.
Does that help, Ms. Prokach?
You know, but I mean, some schools might be bigger than others, so they would have more. That's the only thing I want to make sure that we.
Oh, yeah.
Equity does not mean equal.
Right.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion to amend, so now I need a roll call.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Johnston,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Ms. Prokop,
Yes.
Mr. Stridarn,
Yes.
Ms. Ambito,
Yes.
Mr. Copertino.
Yes.
Now I need a roll call on the amendment, on the, wait, as amended, thank you.
Mr. Johnston,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Ms. Prokop,
Yes.
Mr. Stridarn,
Yes.
Ms. Ambito,
Yes.
Mr. Copertino,
Yes.
Mr. Howard.
Yes.
Thank you. Now we're going to be adoption of policies on the first read. Number 1500, community use of facilities, replacing current community use of facilities. And number 7510 and number 5500, student records, replacing current student records policy, number 8330. I'd like to entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
Discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clark?
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Stritter?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito? Mr. Cupertino?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
The next item is first reading of the policy. It's number 1050, annual district election budget vote. So our next item is discussion regarding the hiring of an outside consultant to audit district transportation. We're going to, go ahead, Mr. Johnston.
Could I propose an amendment to that agenda item, just to clarify the wording there?
Yes,
I would
please.
suggest that it be discussion regarding hiring an outside consultant to make recommendations regarding district transportation.
Thank you. I'm just going to poll everybody, see how you feel about that. Mr. Howard? Mrs. Zambito? Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Stritter?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston? Mr. Cupertino?
Yes.
Thank you, and me too. So I'd like to open up this discussion. Anybody would like to start it off? Mr. Cupertino?
I think this is something we do to evaluate our program, and that we can ensure our contracts are compliant with both SED and state controllers' orders.
Thank you. Anybody else? Mr. Strang?
Can we just have an outline of what that consultant would be looking at?
Yes, we'll get that from Dr. Medea. Yes, and maybe he can work with some of the members of the Audit and Finance Committee.
Yes.
Thank you. Can I have a dollar figure? What are we willing to go up to with this? You don't want to spend it all. Go ahead, Mr. Cappuccino.
Maximum of 12,500.
Okay, everybody feel okay with that? See, yes, no, yes? Yes,
I
yes?
do have a question on, how do we know what the consultants cost if we don't know what the scope of the work is?
I think we need to have a maximum, and then we can figure out scope of work, and then we can adjust that maximum.
That'd be
So it's
fine.
up to, okay?
Thank you.
And I also need from you a little bit of guidance on how long you would like to take this, for this process to take. No longer than 3 months, no longer than, what's your feeling, Mr. Stritter?
I'd like to have it done before the end of this year so that we can start the budget process comes in January. We have a figure of what we're going to use for,
This calendar year.
yes, the calendar year.
Okay. Anybody else? Too short?
I would say that 3 months would be appropriate for that kind of a recommendation. What? Turn it off? Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Did you
So
hear?
3 months. Yes, 3 months.
Yeah, I would say that.
Mr. Cupertino?
Usually, once you get an outside firm in there, it's evaluated in usually 1 to 2 weeks in there. That's how it's been done in other.
We have to get that firm, right? We have to interview that firm, so it may take up to 3 months. Yeah?
The only thing about that is the fact that if you decide to put it out on bid, it's going to be a factor because a new company would not be able to get equipment in place by the start of the school year in September there, so I think it's something you need to do as soon as possible.
Okay. So can we say as soon as possible, but no later than 3 months? Is that a good compromise? Mr. Johnston?
Just a comment, perhaps to be clear that the 3 months target would be to have everything completed within?
Yes. Everybody okay with that? Because this is a discussion. Ms. Prakash? Yep. Yes?
Yes.
Dr. Patiz, does that give you an idea of what we'd like? Thank you. Okay, we'd like to move on. I'd like to entertain a motion to table item E.
So
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
No.
Ms. Ambito?
Yes.
Mr. Copertino?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes. Our next items are from our superintendent, Dr. Padilla.
Thank you, Madam President. Good evening, everyone. I have a couple of announcements/presentations. Just get my notes together here. The Superintendent Student Advisory Council is a group of 9 to 12 graders that will meet monthly with me. The purpose of the Superintendent Advisory Board is to provide an avenue of participation and involvement of secondary student leaders in the district. This advisory board will offer advice on student outcomes to me from the perspective of students in the district, with the primary mission being to promote our district goals through student input in the areas that impact them, their performance, safety, school pride, and areas of concern from the perspective of our students. This is a district-wide, youth-led board that is committed to providing a voice for other students in the district. And so if I could have one of our co-principals, Mr. Dotto, he will call up each student so they can be recognized, and this will be a group that will work with me again monthly throughout the entire year. You guys can, once your name is called, just come up.
Thank you. On behalf of Mr. Rodriguez and myself from the North Campus, the following students have been selected for the Student Advisory Council Board. Freshman Adam Amir, sophomore Tanaj Cook, junior Angel Torres, I'm not sure, senior Kayla Helm. From the main campus, sophomores Whitney Sakoti and Greg Fisher. Juniors Ava Nessie and Amir Roberts. And seniors Maya Fountain and and Antonio Simone.
Your skill.
Thank you.
Thank you again, scholars, and I am very much looking forward to our collaboration throughout the school year, and I'm very much interested in learning what life is like for you in our district from your viewpoint. So I very much look forward to our work together throughout the school year. Next is a receivership update. Coming around, sorry about that. Coming around for the board are the indicators for demonstrable improvement that have been identified, selected for Temple Hill Academy. This is a requirement under law that every school under receivership identify indicators by which they will be evaluated throughout the school year. So in front of you, you see a total of 10 indicators ranging from the school making yearly progress, every school in the district, every school in the state under receivership, whether that be a struggling school or a persistently struggling school, had this as an indicator. Just to kind of give you some content behind these indicators, every school under receivership had to have a total of 10. Some of these indicators were chosen by the state. For Temple Hill, only 2 indicators were chosen by the state. And that's important, I need to stress that. So that means that the district, along with the community engagement team, identified 8 indicators to be submitted to the state. And so they range from making yearly progress, closing the gap between students with disabilities, Hispanic students in ELA and math, providing 200 additional extended learning time hours over the course of the year, and attendance. This was shared with the Temple Hill faculty today. It was shared with the board on Thursday. And again, this has been submitted to the state. We're just waiting for them to give us the stamp of approval. Oh, we got it. So we have it. We had a webinar with the state last week. And so things are now in full motion. I am officially the receiver of Temple Hill Academy, and again, wanted the board to have in writing the indicators that have been selected.
Just one point of clarification, we received the approval of the demonstrable indicators. We still have to update the school comprehensive education plan. Once that's submitted and reviewed by the commissioner, then we will get a second level of information back from the state.
Thank you. So, questions about the work at Temple Hill as it pertains to receivership? Mr. Shadon?
Which 2 did the state select?
The first 2.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have been providing updates. I will continue to provide updates. I was at Temple Hill today. I was at Temple Hill last week. I will continue to make visits to the school. I work very closely with the administration. I have been in and out of classrooms and talking to students and to teachers, and will continue to monitor. Again, as Mr. Forger said, there's additional work that we have to do based on feedback that we received from the state that will be taking place. We have 2 more meetings scheduled later this month. And then we have to submit more information to the state, one report being a quarterly report based on where we are as a school. So again, I'll be providing additional information to you as the year progresses. Lastly is an external audit report from Mr. Mark Levy. If you can come up to the microphone, please.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having Nugent Hausler prepare the annual audit for the district for the year ended June 30th, 2015. I'll just make tonight very brief. Prior to this evening, we met with the audit committee, went in very much detail, probably over an hour and a half or so, going through the audit report in detail. Like I said, tonight will be a brief version. If you have questions, though, by all means ask questions. I'll try to do my best to answer questions this evening. If I go too fast, or I didn't cover something that you'd like to hear, please let me know. So I'll try to make this fairly quick for you. The report they have in front of you is basically broken down into 4 sections. Okay, you have the entity-wide statements, which I'll get into what that actually is. You have your fund statements, which the district prepares on a daily basis. And then you have the audit over federal awards, and you have your extra classroom activity funds. Okay, so that's the 4 main sections. So first let's start with the independent auditor's report on page 1, and going on to page 2. And there, the most important thing I'm probably going to tell you this evening is that the district got a clean opinion. Okay, on the top of page 2, basically I'll just read part of the paragraph. In our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the governmental activities. So that's a good thing. If we had any major problems, any material misstatements, we have to note that, and we have to give you a modified opinion. So this is called a clean opinion or an unmodified report. I'd like to just point out, though, that the next paragraph at the top of page 2, change in accounting principle. This year you had to adopt a new accounting standard. It was GASB 62, a couple standards, but particularly here, GASB 68 and 71. and it has to do with pension reporting for your ERS and your TRS plans of the district. That's all actuarially determined. New York State tells the district what you have to contribute. However, a great deal of disclosures occurred this year that I'll go through very briefly tonight. I won't go into detail, but it added probably 8 to 10 pages to this report, just on the disclosure for those pension plans. Okay, again, right after the independent audit report is what's called the MD&A, or Management Discussion and Analysis. And what that is a plain English version of the financial highlights of the district will happen this year. Instead of looking at balance sheets, financial statements that we auditors and accountants like to prepare, this is sort of a plain English version of what happened. It's prepared by the district. We just make sure that certain required information is included in the MD&A. The only thing I would point out too is on page 8 and 9, this is the only place in the report where you see comparative information. Everything else is pretty much just for the year ended June 30th of 2015, but on page 8 and 9 you do see comparative information. So if you're looking on page 8, you can see the total assets at the beginning of the year, or at the end of 2014, was $238 million. At the end of 2015 was almost $318 million. Okay, and you can see the comparison there. And on page 9, it's a comparative of your revenues. And I'll just do the totals. You can see total revenues in 2014 was $264 million, and in 2015, $277 million. Okay, that's on the full accrual method, which I'll get to what that means in a little bit. If you keep flipping through, I won't go through the details. There's pie charts, pictures telling you, like a picture worth 1,000 words, kind of tells you what is going on. Okay, starting on, again, I'm moving fast, starting on page 18, these are the fund statements that the district prepares on a daily basis. Okay, and you can see, if you click page 18, you have the general fund, special aid fund, school lunch, capital projects, debt service, and library funds, all listed on this page. This is what's called on the modified accrual basis, and what that means is we didn't include your capital assets, your long-term liabilities, things of that nature aren't included here. This is what they call a current resource measurement focus. Okay, so sticking with the general fund, you can see that the general fund total assets were $58 million, and you can see what the cash position was. You had tax receivables of $4.3 million, you had federal and state aid receivable of $3.7 million, and right on down the line of your assets give you the $58.1 million. Your liabilities for the district on the current current measurement focus, where you had $32.1 million. And you can see your accounts payable, $6.5 million. You had some accrued liabilities of $4.3 million. The other big number there was your due to TRS of the $19 million. Okay, but again, this is all on the modified accrual. Those numbers change a lot when we get to the full accrual. So the net effect, if you take your assets less your liabilities, will leave you with, at the bottom of the page, total fund balances of $22.6 million. And you can see that there's a non-spendable portion of $250,000. You're restricted of $12.1 million. If you want to see what that's made up of, you can flip to page 33, and it lists all the reserves of the district. So you can see you had a workers' comp reserve of $6.9 million. You had an unemployment reserve of about $400,000, a tax cert reserve of $2.6 million, and employee benefit accrued liability reserve of $2.2 million. So giving you total reserves in the general fund of just over $12.1 million. Okay, the only other thing, I won't go through all the funds that are listed here, but you can see the nice thing about this statement is you can see all the funds, fund balances are not in a deficit, they're positive positions. That's a good thing. Some of the districts that we do go to have deficit positions. For some funds, that's okay, but you prefer to not see deficit positions, and happy to report all your funds have positive positions. Flipping to page 20, this is your income statement, or more properly termed here, your statement of revenues and expenditures, and changes in fund balance. And again, all the funds are listed again. And but if you just look at the general fund particularly, you can see your total revenues were $246 million here. You had total expenditures of $228 million, giving you excess revenues of $17 million. However, you transferred $13.9 million to other funds to help them out for different reasons during the year. So that the net increase, if you will, for the general fund for the year was $4.4 million. Again, this is on what's called a modified accrual. It's going to change a lot when we go to the next statement. The only thing I'll point out here is if you go across the last column on page 20, under excess revenues and other sources, it's the third number from the bottom there, $3.7 million. So if you remember that, that's what the district was to the good on the modified accrual. Now we're going to go to the full accrual, so we're going to go backwards. If you go to page 16, This is your statements on what we call the entity-wide. Government accounting standards require you to go full accrual, kind of like a for-profit entity. And here we bring on your capital assets, your non-current assets, and your long-term liabilities. So here under assets, you can see the last two lines on toward the top of the page. Your TRS net pension asset was $76.2 million. That's something new this year because of the new accounting standards that were implemented. You had capital assets net of accumulated depreciation of $155 million. And you had deferred charges, particularly you can see deferred charges pensions of $20.5 million. Okay, giving you total assets and deferred outflows of almost $318 million. Okay. Now, the liabilities, they're similar to what we saw on the fund statements. However, under long-term liabilities, we bring on your bonds payable, your compensated absences, the ERS and pension liability, other post-employment benefits, which is the retiree health insurance, and your judgments and claims, which is your workers' comp claims. Okay, so you can see all those liabilities there adding up to just shy of $325 million. Okay, and then you have additional deferred inflows for the pensions, which again, that has to do with the GASB 68 and 71 that were implemented this year. So this is something new from prior years of $52.3 million. Okay, so when that's all actuarially calculated, and that's, there's not numbers that we generate. This is what provided by the New York State ERS and TRS actuaries have presented and auditors have presented to us. Okay, but when all said and done here, your net pension, your net position is a deficit of $59.1 million. Okay. If you go to the next page, you'll see, though, that was an increase over last year of $12.4 million. So that the net position of the district increased. I'd like to just point out, this is full accrual. Again, the better this position looks, the better it is for bonding purposes, but it doesn't really mean a heck of a lot because on a day-to-day basis, the fund statements is really what you key in on for a district. In other words, looking at particularly the other post-employment benefits, retiree health insurance at $187 million, while that liability is gradually getting brought on the books, it's going to end up being a much larger number. It's going to be $300 or $400 million or more over the next few years. You can't fund that liability. It's pay as you go. Okay, so New York State doesn't allow you to fund it. You can't put a reserve for that. It's against the law currently. I haven't heard any change in that coming down the pike. But anyway, again, just pointing that out, that's a big difference on these for these statements over your fund statements. Okay. Any questions? We're going really quick. Okay.
On page 14, you have capital assets of land as $1.9 million. Did you ever break down the difference between vacant and used land?
No, I mean, we could probably do that with Mimi's help and what the records that we have. We could probably find it out for you, but we don't break it out on here. But that's probably possible.
It would be nice to know how much value we have in vacant land. Thank you.
Okay. The next part of the statement, I'm going to jump ahead to the federal awards. That's page 68 through 76. Okay. Well, actually, okay, I'm sorry. I skipped off all your notes. So the notes are pretty standard. If I went through these at length, you'd all fall asleep before I left here. So I'm not going to bore you with those details, but they are here for you to view. It goes through what your capital assets were. It goes through your accounting policies. It tells you, I'm on page 45, just one selection here, your long-term debt. So it's listed out what your bonds payable were. You can see if you flip to page 45, $85.7 million at the end of the year were your bonds payable. You had some adjustments there when the district this year and prior years had refunded some bonds. When you do that, you get a bond premium, or possibly, in this case, you did get a bond premium. You're required to amortize that bond premium. So going forward, so that's why you see the bond premium and deferred amounts on refunding. The district defeased some debt in the past, or refunded the debt. And then you can see a little lower on the page, your other liabilities, compensated absences, retained percentages, other post-employment benefits, again, judgments and claims. Total long-term liabilities at the end of June 30th, 2015, $287.9 million. Okay, just point that out. You can see the payouts of that debt on the next page, page 46. Pages 47 through page 47 through, I'm just looking through the pension note. This is what I mentioned earlier, your pension plan. This is all new disclosures, starting on page 47, running through the top of page 54. This added 8 to 10 pages to your report that you actually see. You were required, when you implemented these statements, and I won't get into the details, but you had a prior period adjustment. We had to restate beginning numbers because of that. All this was because the people who wrote these standards thought it would be more transparent, would be more beneficial to the readers and users of the financial statements. That remains to be seen, but you were required to implement it, and which you did. And there was also 2 supplemental schedules later on that are more actuarial disclosures on the pensions. Again, I won't go through all those details this evening. So as I started mentioning before, if we flip to page, I'm going to skip right through all the supplemental schedules. On page 68, this is where we start the order of the federal awards. Okay, the district expended over $500,000 for federal awards in the past fiscal year, so you're required to have what's called a single audit. So that's what these pages kind of go through. The first audit report has to do with your internal controls and compliance over your federal awards. Basically, we're looking to see if there's any deficiencies in internal controls. I'm happy to report we did not find any major material or significant deficiencies, so therefore, it's not really called a clean opinion, but there's nothing noteworthy that we haven't mentioned to you. So I'll leave it at that, so that's a good thing. On page 70, this is what we call the OMB Circular A133 report, or your single audit report. And here we're actually reviewing on an alternating basis every year what the major programs are of the district, and we make sure that you are in compliance with the federal regulations regarding those programs. So this year your major programs were your school lunch program that we audited for this purpose, or your school lunch program, your ARA Race to the Top funding, and your Title II programs. Okay, next year maybe Title I and maybe your 611, 619. You know, it depends. But we kind of rotate yearly as required. Again, we had no compliance issues. It would be said in this letter if there was a compliance issue. Happy to report to the district this evening. There were no major areas of any issues that had to be reported. On page 72 and going on to 73, these are the actual federal awards that the district utilized this past year. And you can see, right down on the first page, they total down to $10.4 million. That's carried over to the next page where we bring on the school lunch program. That's your U.S. Department of Agriculture and Child Nutrition Cluster for a total federal awards expended of $15.1 million. And that's a lot of money for districts. Obviously, Newburgh is the largest district in the area. Most districts that we audit, have $2 million or so of federal awards expended. So you're well in excess of most other districts in the area. Okay, so that was, basically got a clean opinion. Everything's looking good for the federal awards. The last part of the financial statements I'll talk about, unless there's questions, of course. Page 77, this is the audit of the extra classroom funds. Okay, this is on the cash basis. So we have something on a modified accrual, we have something on accrual. This is the cash basis. In other words, just reported cash in, cash out. It's kind of like you do your own checking account here. These are the funds of the districts, though. So, the funds of the students, though. This is not district funds. Obviously, this is money raised by the students to be used for students' activities. We got a clean opinion here. Everything that we saw was, stated properly in all material respects. So on page 79, you can see there were total cash at the end of the year of just over $226,000. That's broken down by club or activity on pages 80 and 81. And you can see, so page 80 is the high school basically, and it's all the activities that are going on in the high school. And you can see they started the year with $103,000. They brought in $271,000. Again, this is what the students, are participating in their participation, the results of their participation. And your disbursements their disbursements, $291,000, leaving them with $83,508 at the end of the year to be carried over to next year, or this year. On the next page, you have the middle schools and elementary schools, what their activities were. And again, I'm not going through line by line, but when you're all done, we started the year with $243,000, brought in $454,000, spent almost $71,000, leaving extra classroom funds as of June 30th of 2015 of just over $226,000. Again, we found everything was stated properly for those funds, and that's it. Any questions? I went through super fast. I think I went super fast anyway. Any questions?
A little more detail next year.
Are you serious? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure with me and the department. They did a fine job, and again, it was a pleasure working with you. Thanks.
Madam President, that concludes my items.
Thank you, Dia.
Okay, so this evening, we have 2 workshop items. First one is on student data privacy, and our presenter for that will be Mr. David Shaw, and that will be followed up by AIS, Academic Intervention Services, by our CNI team and several teachers.
Okay, good evening, board members, Dr. Padilla, staff, and community. This presentation is to inform about student data privacy rights. And this was a huge issue about a year and a half ago. You may remember that the state was looking to collect 400 data points regarding students in every district, and then to transmit them to a company called InBloom. And InBloom would then be able to use data in certain ways. And one thought was that InBloom might then come back through data dashboards to try to approach parents to sell products to them. There was quite an effort locally in Westchester and in Mid-Hudson Valley to oppose this and to clamp down on what data regarding students that the government would receive. So as a consequence of that, 2 new sections of the education law were added, 2C and 2D. And they primarily address what hadn't been addressed before, was issues regarding electronic transmittal and storage of student identifiable information by third-party contractors and consultants. So the main feature of the state privacy law is now a parent's bill of rights. Every school district, including Newburgh, and we do have one and it's posted on the website, must have a parent's bill of rights for data privacy and security. And it deals with not only student personally identifiable information, but it also extended to classroom teachers and principals, APPR composite scores and the EDI ratings. So it was an interesting introduction of teacher and principal privacy rights. So the parent's bill of rights has certain elements to it, and they're essentially commitments. First, that a student's personally identifiable information cannot be sold or released for any commercial purpose. So that took care of InBloom and Pearson and on and on. Secondly, that the parents have the right to review the contents of students' educational records. That's really a restatement of federal FERPA rights. Thirdly, that the district would be committed to industry and best practices under state and federal law to protect confidentiality. And what they specified was to use encryption in the transmittal of information, firewalls, and passwords, so that this information cannot be readily attained by others. Also, there's a requirement to have a complaint official regarding student privacy issues. Then the Parents' Bill of Rights segues over to third-party contractors, referred to as TCPs. And as to them, the Bill of Rights must include a statement of the exclusive purpose for which the student, teacher, or principal data will be used when in the hands of the third party, how they will assure legal compliance by its subcontractors, because under FERPA and this law, it's possible that the third party will have yet a fourth party under its control under a contract, and they too must be in compliance with the security requirements and information access requirements of this law as well as FERPA. Next, what would happen to the data when the third-party contractor's contract expires? How will it be disposed of? It may be disposed of by destruction. Also, a procedure for parent students, eligible students, to challenge the accuracy of their record, or for teachers or principals to challenge the accuracy of the record that's collected through APPR about them. Also, the Parents' Bill of Rights is supposed to address data security protection when the data is in storage. Now, this law came about 40 years after the federal privacy law that protects student information, and that's referred to as FERPA, or the Buckley Amendment is the federal legislation. And that indicated that student education records may be disclosed to individuals other than the parents, guardians, or eligible students themselves, but only under certain restrictions. So while the parent may have access, others will not, and we'll go through what some of these restrictions are, and they're all embedded within 2C and 2D of the New York State Education Law. So the parents generally have the right to access student information, education records. So too students who are over the age of 18. They're referred to as eligible students. For others to inspect personally identifiable student records, there must either be a need to know, which is referred to as a legitimate educational interest, or the prior written consent document signed by the parent or by an eligible student. The FERPA regulations are set forth at 34, this is the federal code, part 99, and that requires districts to give annual notice to parents and eligible students of their rights under FERPA. And both have access to records without consent. Both parents do, unless there's a court order that may restrict one of the parents' access to student records. So that would be report cards, progress reports, etc. Parents of public school students and students who are 18 or older, but still dependents, may be able to access the records of the older than 18-year-old students if they're reported as dependents on the federal tax form. So once the child turns 18, that doesn't mean the parents are closed out if they are still dependents on the tax forms. Okay, so what exactly are the student records? The education records that contain personally identifiable information would be a broad statement, virtually any information about the student, which would include films, photographs, tape, even the name of the student, the home address. All of those are considered to be education records, although some of them may be subject to disclosure as directory information that I'll get to in a moment. Okay, there are exceptions to parental and eligible students' rights to review records that are maintained by the school district. There are records that are referred to as sole possession records. These may be notes that are made by pedagogical employees, psychologists, social workers. They jot down notes as they're doing their work, and if those notes are not shared with others or put in the student's pupil personnel file, they would not have to be disclosed to the parents or eligible students. There may be certain law enforcement records, and that isn't something that we see here, but if you had a law enforcement division, that would not be shared with the parent or students. Certainly anything about a student discipline record can be accessed by the parent or an eligible student. Employment records, if you employ a student, it's a part-time employee, those employment records under FERPA would not be accessible to the student. Under FOIL, they actually would be a different state law. At the post-secondary level, which is not us, student treatment records by psychologists, social workers, could be withheld from the students. Now, the following information that's maintained in student education records may be disclosed without prior written consent unless the parents or eligible students sign an opt-out form. So this would include directory information. Now, directory information has been a subject of concern for the board's policy committee and the board as a whole. And tonight, when you adopted the new student records policy, you severely restricted the information about students that would be going out, which means that there would be far less that might be subject to disclosure without a prior written consent of a parent. So your doing so is consistent with the trends now to protect privacy interests. Also, school officials, employees, and other institutions that have a legitimate educational interest in information may have information shared that is personally identifiable without a prior written consent. And that might be the state ed department, it might be teachers, it might be school support staff who work directly with the student, and they're on a need-to-know basis. In the event of a health or safety emergency, and that would be a very rare occurrence, we know it is here, very rare, I can't recall one, that information about students could be shared if it's necessary to preserve health and safety. The U.S. Comptroller, the U.S. Attorney General, the Secretary of Education can access personally identifiable information, and there is a process for subpoena whereby personally identifiable information can be revealed. So when the state was very hot on this issue, back in April of 2014, under Section 2D, the state created the position of Chief Privacy Officer. And the chief was supposed to receive parental and stakeholder input to further develop aspects of each district's Bill of Rights. Hasn't gotten around to that yet. The privacy officer is also supposed to develop regulations to flesh out Sections 2C and 2D. That hasn't happened yet either. And the officer is supposed to establish standards for data privacy, security, and best practices. Nothing has been done about that either. So what has the chief done? On July 29, 2014, a memo was issued with some questions and answers that basically dealt with FERPA, kind of a restatement of FERPA. Nothing was done to inform about data security measures. And this is a very hot issue because this can be extremely expensive. And how they ultimately write the regulations that are now a year and a half overdue will be very telling, but keep your eyes on this issue. Okay, so who are the third-party contractors? We know it would be data dashboards. These are the companies that may sell things to you, like an Infinite Campus or other companies that would have you input report card information, testing information that the parents could then access. If you're sending them that information, they have to be compliant with the security and other requirements of Sections 2C and 2D. Now, it's an unanswered question about whether special ed and related services consultants, school attorneys, and physicians would be on a need-to-know basis, or they would be under a requirement to meet the data security requirements of this law. So we've taken a conservative approach saying that it does apply to consultants, school attorney, that's us, and physician. And guidance has been requested from SED, none has been provided. So there's a little bit of good news for some people, that under this law, there's no private cause of action that could be brought against the school district or a BOCES or other educational agency under the state data privacy law. The bad news is for the third-party contractors, that if they breach a data security requirement, there could be civil penalties of no less than $5,000 and up to $10,000, but not to exceed $150,000. So that, in a nutshell, brings us through the legislation, the old FERPA law, and also the new education law provisions. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw. Thank you for this really good information.
Thank you. If I can have the AIS team come up.
Madam President and board members. Thank you for the opportunity of affording the Division of CNI, Curriculum and Instruction, a slot to present to you an AIS update. About a year ago, you may recall, several of you, that we encountered several questions around academic intervention services. What's the plan? Where are the resources? How can we possibly provide the mandated services, particularly at the high school level, in the state that we're in. We were lacking personnel. We weren't certain of what were the right resources, but we did have a lot of talent. That's the talent that brought us to task. And so we began over the course of the year with the vast support of teachers as well as administrators to analyze data, research resources that were very much aligned to our needs, not just settling for what we had had in the past. And we also began to look at different angles for providing creative supports to students, particularly at the high school, where we had several hundred students who were lacking the intervention services, particularly in reading and writing. We began to dabble in using Apex. We piloted it at the North Campus. We also, at the main campus, started up a writing lab, which initially was tapping into supporting AIS students, but then expanded to support as many students as possible with writing across the disciplines, marking huge successes with our Regents exams. With all that creativity from our teachers, we were still noticing across grades K to 8 that there was a lack of coherence and consistency, although we did have the right personnel in place. And so we began to dig deeper, and we continued to plead with you to support AIS for this year. And as a result of a lot of work, you all afforded us 10 additional personnel to support grades K through 12 with AIS this year in both ELA and ELA. So the support was not limited to just the high school. At this time, we feel very confident that we're now in the position to better support all of our students requiring these AIS services so that our district can in fact work diligently towards coherence, consistency, continuity, and connectedness with AIS. Now I'd like to call several folks up to the podium who will continue the presentation. We have Mr. David Brown, Dr. Linda Hatfield, and Ms. Christine McCartney.
So the purpose of a district-wide plan, obviously, to ensure compliance, to provide consistency and equity throughout the district, and to make sure that all students have a chance to be successful. The process started last spring. During April and May, we brought together teachers from the elementary level and on the high school level. Initially, they worked as two separate teams. After about 6 weeks of putting their heads together, putting best practice down on paper, we brought both teams together to kind of hash it out and do that vertical alignment. When we got that, the two documents combined as one, we brought in many different AIS teachers from across the district those were our focus groups, to get other sets of eyes on the document. During the summer, taking all the feedback that we got from various teachers, we began to synthesize both documents and start to fine-tune it. With the addition of Dr. Hatfield, at the end of August, she lent her expertise at that point to the document with some refining. And at this point in October, we are in the process of rolling it out, sharing it again we have met with all building principals and all AIS teams across the district. I do want to stress, though, that this is a living document, okay? And you have our commitment that a living document can be kind of cliche. This is something that is going to be tended to and cared for regularly. These are just some of the main participants that came together last April and May. But you can see that this really is a district-wide representation. We have all but 2 of the schools represented. There were teachers, building administrators, district administrators, and senior staff had moments where their eyes and input was given. I'm going to hand it off to Linda.
Good evening. Academic intervention services, what is it? Academic intervention services are required by New York State. They are to support students to achieve the learning standards in ELA grades K through 12, math K through 12, science and social studies 4 through 12. It is important to understand that we address academic intervention services as a supplement to classroom instruction. Student support services are there to also address barriers that may have impacted their performance. So for example, attendance issues may impact a student's academic performance. Discipline issues, behavior issues may impact it. So AIS is also a support service in terms of helping students clear up some of those issues in order to increase their student performance. What is the difference? This has been a great question asked to me many times so far. This past month and a half, what is the difference between academic intervention services and response to intervention? AIS, as I said, is a New York State mandated service designed to help students achieve the Common Core learning standards. We are required to provide additional instruction in addition to the classroom instruction. We must make sure that the intensity of services vary and that the identification of students is based on multiple measures. RTI is a process to determine if a student responds to scientific research-based instruction in the classroom. It's multi-tiered, it's an early intervention program, and it's designed to improve the outcomes of students K through 4 in ELA. Eligibility of services. Students are not just identified randomly for services in academic intervention. We do require that we use multiple measures. We use such things as local assessments. We use such thing as your state assessments and teacher recommendation and report cards. All those data points are required when we're looking at identifying students for services. Intensity of services. Depending on the data points and depending on the need of the students, it depends on the intensity of which they're being provided academic intervention services. The most intensive are usually given to our students who are scoring at a level 1. And that can be required, it can be serviced by an AIS teacher. AIS could be serviced by a special education teacher, a bilingual and or an ENL teacher. Moderately intensive could be students who are scoring at a level 2. And those services can be provided by an AIS teacher, a classroom teacher within the classroom, a special education teacher, as well as an ENL teacher. The monitor exit, one of the things that this document does provide for us is entry and exit criteria, which we'll show you in a little while. But the monitor exit allows us to monitor students who may have been in academic intervention services as a moderately intensive or most intensive student, and then now we monitor them as they make progress throughout the year or years, and then we exit them from the program, and we also provide, that's provided by classroom teachers, special education teachers, and ENL teachers. Our range of services vary, depending also on the needs of our students. So one way that we provide academic intervention is within classroom staffing. A lot of our AIS teachers currently push into the classroom during the literacy block, providing additional instruction to students. So the classroom teacher may see them, and then the AIS teacher may see them in the next half an hour. So it's called within class staffing. Small group instruction usually can happen as a pull-out. Some of our AIS teachers have seen their students as a pull-out, where they pull out in a group of 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 at the most, hopefully. And they receive small group instruction. And those groups are usually based on skills or needs of the group. Differentiated instruction can happen within the class as well, making sure that we're providing appropriate instruction at the level of students. One of the things that we are required to do is to notify parents of services. So this document does explain to you the types of notifications that we have to provide. We must notify parents of services in the beginning of the school year. We must be able to identify how that child was identified for services, the criteria that was used, as well as the type of service that's being provided, the frequency, and who is providing that service. Throughout the year, AIS teachers do provide parents with progress reports. That's in addition to the child's regular report card, and that's usually done as a narrative so that it explains to the parents what they've been working on and the skills that they're still in need of. If a child does exit the program, we are required to provide parents with a notification of discontinuation, telling them that they have reached the exit criteria and that they will no longer need services, but will most likely be monitored throughout the year. The school parent compact, this provides, it's a compact between the school district and the parents, and it basically outlines how the school will support the students in their academic success, and then what the parents can do at home. It is kind of an agreement that is signed by the school as well as the teacher, and then it comes back. But it's just a written agreement that talks about what the parents can do at home as well as what's happening in school. Entrance exit criteria. Many of you may know that based on the New York State scores, we do have an exit and entrance criteria of going into AIS. We are required for grades 3 through 8 to use the New York State ELA as well as the New York State math, along with other multiple measures. These are the cut scores. Any student who falls below these cut scores is required to have some type of academic service. This year we've developed continuum, and this is also a document in your green folder. It's the continuum of reading levels, the Spanish continuum of reading levels based on our Spanish assessment, as well as the continuum of math levels. What this tells you is that it provides teachers a concrete way of looking at progress monitoring of students, K through 8 across the board. And it allows teachers to identify who's really at risk and who's well below. That's your red. Those are students that really should be receiving the most intensive AIS services. Your yellow is moderate AIS, and your blue and your green is moderate to exit criteria.
This is where I was going to butt
I
in.
know.
This document was actually born out of some work that elementary CNI started last spring. We started looking at the report cards from all the elementary schools over the course of the year. And this was also a document that teachers have requested. What does a 3 look like? What does a 4 look like? So doing some research, coming up with this continuum, and then again when we started working on the AIS document, this was a natural fit. This is also a document that is going to be shared with all the teachers to assist them come report card time.
One thing I do want to caution is that this is not a correlation chart. It is just to mark in for each assessment across the year where kids should be at. Sometimes people look at this and say, oh, this equals this in this grade level, and it's not. It's just to mark the progress based on each individual assessment. High school, I'm going to introduce Christine.
Hi. So I'm just going to sort of paint a picture of what AIS looks like at the high school level for you guys, and I put some documents in your folder that I think will help you just sort of understand what we're doing. So there's the Literacy Across the Disciplines Guide, which was born out of the work that we did with Teachers College last year, so thanks for approving that. It was super beneficial for the AIS teachers that worked with them. If you flip through it, you can kind of see that what we tried to do was frame some of the essential literacy skills for content area teachers. So we were trying to bring some of the things that we work on in the ELA classroom to the content area teachers in a way that they could use this document to immediately be useful when they're planning their lessons in their classroom. So for each one of the skills, it sort of gives a working definition of it, some questions that teachers can actually ask of themselves if they're using this skill in their lesson planning, and then some cross-curricular prompts and actual moves that the teachers could do in their classrooms. And that was actually, we got that from this Every Teacher is a Literacy Teacher brochure, and we adopted it for the students at Newburgh Free Academy. If you flip to page 12, I'm going to talk about the Writing Lab in a minute, but we created a website that is still in construction, but has at least, I'm at North Campus now, so I'm kind of speaking from the North Campus perspective, but it's been really useful for getting content area teachers to start thinking about how they can utilize ELA teachers as resources within their classroom. So they can go on that website, and there's a list of lessons, such as a lot of teachers complain that students are just plagiarizing, they're just copying and pasting literally right off the internet. So as an English teacher, I know that students plagiarize because they haven't really been taught how to paraphrase and blend quotations correctly. So we have a lesson on that teachers can go there and they can download the resources for it. The rest of the book is just seriously resources that teachers can use right in their classroom. We tried to get a guide to annotation so that all teachers were teaching annotation in a standardized way. There's some information on close reading because in the ELA classroom, that's what the focus has been on for the past forever, but mainly since the Common Core the Common Core standards came out, we've really been focusing on that. And then some reproducible worksheets for them to use with students with texts. So at North Campus, we, at the beginning of the year, held a professional development session for the teachers where we walked them through this booklet and explained the resources that were available throughout the school for them. So if now I could direct your attention to this two-sided handout. We have writing labs and math labs, which you may have heard about at North Campus. It was born out of the work that we did last year setting up the writing lab at Main Campus. And basically the effort is to support both teachers and students. So the writing lab and the math lab support students because it's a place for them to come. We have really long lunch periods this year, they're 48 minutes. So students can eat their lunch in 15 minutes and then get a pass right from the teacher that's at the cafeteria and spend the rest of that half an hour working up in the writing lab. So there's a teacher in there every period, both the math and the writing lab, to assist students. During lunch periods at North Campus, we have to call and tell them to stop sending students. We run out of room. So we have 10 computers, 20 table workspaces, and then 2 individual sort of like closed off workspaces for students. And we are filling it up on the lunch periods for sure every day. So we created a sign-in sheet that's just a Google form, but every time a student comes in, they sort of fill out some information and it exports through a spreadsheet, which has been infinitely useful for us because we can then take that data from the spreadsheet and provide reports to teachers. So you can see we wanted to make sure that we were reaching the students who deserve academic intervention support, obviously, in the school. So we pulled all the students' AIS levels, and then we were able to determine that, in September, you can see I just did a screenshot of the report that we made. Out of the 854 students that utilized the writing lab, 82% of them were students who required AIS. So moving forward, our plan is to, we started actually today because the progress reports are out. We're pulling students who are not doing well in classes based on the information in their progress reports or our AIS, so that we can actually assign them to come up to the writing lab when they're finished with their lunches, so that we're sort of monitoring those students a little bit more closely. And at the end of each marking period, we'll also be using that data to see how the students are doing and try and get the students who need that extra support up into the classroom. And this is, of course, in addition to pushing into classrooms with the students. One other thing that's kind of cool is that we can use it to send out emails. So at the end of the week, I can send out an email to the teachers of which of their students are utilizing the writing lab, so that they can congratulate the students and keep that positive reinforcement going, and or notice that there are students that are not using the writing lab and give them a little bit of a push to get in there. Last thing I'll say is just on the back of the, one of the things that sort of was born out of this that I'm just really excited about, sorry, I know I'm standing over, is that it really builds the it's professional development for the teachers that's sort of built in. Like if you look on the back, there's some, I just sent a quick email to teachers today, like, hey, tell me something that I can put on here about how this is useful to you. And if you see Zach Williams wrote, it's helped me learn and use new strategies for teaching my students understanding text and social studies. So whether I'm pushing into, myself or one of my colleagues is pushing into a class, or teachers are coming to the writing lab to work on assignments. Like, I literally have a whole binder here. You know, there's a section called rubrics with like 20 rubrics in it already, because teachers are like, I hear that you guys are making these great rubrics up here. What are you doing? How can you help me? So those teachers then are literally, if I'm going in a classroom and I'm teaching them how to do a close reading strategy, from that point forward, that teacher has that strategy in their pocket. So it's got this organic piece to it too, where it's supporting students and teachers. That's it, I'm done. Thank you for listening.
So next steps. As I said before, these are living documents. So when we have been sharing this with our colleagues, one of the first reactions that we've been hearing is, wow, this is really good. I know the critique and the criticism and the suggestions that will come, and that's actually very welcome, because this document isn't done. We look forward to continuously improving it. So I think we're off to a wonderful start. Sarah, you have some closing comments?
So they say that in the midst of difficulty lies opportunity. And we were faced with a huge challenge last year at this time when we had a lot of data, scant resources, and a rubrics cube to figure out. I want to personally thank the board for helping us figure out things by supporting us with the opportunity to seek out additional resources, develop all the deliverables that you have in your folder, and to consider us throughout the year as we continue the work, providing us feedback, providing us anything and everything possible so we can continue to support our students. Thank you.
Any questions?
Mr. Howard, then Mr. Stradaya.
Yes, first I'd like to commend the CNI team and everybody who had a part in this work, because as we go through the budget process every year, and it's an agonizing time, and when we allocate money to do certain things, it's great to see the byproduct of those decisions, and it's really encouraging to see the work that the district is doing, the CNI is doing, that the teachers are doing, but more importantly, it's a great feeling to me to know that this impacts student achievement. This really does. And this is something that we can claim and really feel proud about as a district, that this is something that directly impacts student achievement. And you guys have come up with a great presentation this evening, and I look forward to seeing the end results as we go forward. It's like you said, it's a living document, and the results will be shown every year when those cohorts graduate. And the more kids that cross the academy field is because of this type of work. I just want to commend you guys. Thank you.
Mr. Stradaya.
I would like to thank everyone involved in this project. It's come out to be a wonderful document, and I know that my son and his friends love going to the math and the writing lab every day, so I really appreciate that. Thank you.
And I do just want to stress, thank you. But this many teachers, poured their sweat and their expertise into this. So this really is a district-wide effort. So I will take your kudos and definitely share them with the rest of the team that worked on this.
Ms. Prakash?
Yes, I just wanted to add that being on the C9 team for many years and being in the district for many years beyond that, this is a truly collaborative effort, and not just from the high school, but also the elementary, and then working together, and it's just magnificent. I can't wait to see it evolve. My question is, you said that there was 2 schools that didn't participate in this. How are we going to roll this out to them? And how is it also going to be rolled out to the various schools with the people that weren't involved in doing this?
The 2 schools that weren't involved, it was no fault of their own, if not the best way to phrase that, but You know, we took volunteers. I know one of the teachers who wanted to participate was extremely pregnant. But if they weren't there in body, they were there in spirit. It has been rolled out to every single building. The past few weeks, Linda and I have traveled to every single elementary school. We've met with the middle schools. Kristen has met with both high school campuses. So even though there were 2 schools missing from that list that didn't have teachers physically present at first, every single building has been introduced to this new document.
When you say introduced, that's to the administration or to the teachers?
To the administration and to all the AIS teachers.
Okay, and it's going to be rolled out further to the classroom teachers?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Just checking.
One of the things I just want to call out is that we're excited in CNI this year because one of the things that we're going to have doing popping, as the kids would say, is a website. We're going to have our own webpage where we can upload all of these and other documents, and they can be accessed by anyone.
So basically, we need more writing labs and math labs.
There's a little foreshadowing there.
If you use trailers at North, get more extension.
Mr. Cappuccino.
Is there any way that you could share the growth of the students with this board on maybe a quarterly basis?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, CNI team. Thank you very much.
I think another just fine example of how the district is aligning resources to Vision 2020. I can't help myself but to continue to make that alignment. And as you already heard, this was a request that we made during budget season, and it's just important to allow you to see evidence of, while we make these requests during these very difficult times, that decisions have to be made, but you can see the fruit of the labor so far. So please, again, be very supportive during next budget season when we have to make a request. Just a little plug. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Dr. Padilla. We're going to move on to committee reports. Library Committee, Mr. Johnston.
Thank you, Madam. The Library Committee met on Wednesday, October 7th. Library Director Thomas shared with the committee strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, the SWOT analysis that is the next step in the library future planning process. In the months ahead, focus groups will be formed for broader input. There was discussion about storage needs. Mobile shelving will be installed in the rock room area, as was budgeted. There was also discussion about collaboration and library branch and mobile opportunities. Coming to the board in the near future will be a few conference requests and the annual approval of the RCLS budget. A noteworthy community event will be occurring later this month at the library. On October 21, there will be a debate among Newburgh mayoral and council member candidates. And coming soon, probably in November, will be another community and police relations event.
Thank you, Mr. Johnston. Personnel Committee, Ms. Prakash.
Yes, we had a very productive personnel meeting. We talked about the abolishment of a senior custodian position, creation of a cleaner position. We discussed job descriptions and creation of math instructional specialists, science instructional specialists, curriculum chair for phys ed and health, and NTC coordinator. Also discussed the creation of a principal typist position, approval of certain lead evaluators, the recommendations for winter and spring sports, and additional Schedule J items, and Title I providers. And the rest was in executive session.
Thank you, Ms. Prakash. Policy Committee, Mr. Stradiron.
Yes, Madam President. The Policy Committee met on September 30th. The first item was the discussion on the appeal of grades policy number 2624. Mr. Johnson had brought this up regarding a recent controller's audit that looked into adequate control access to student grading information. And there was a recommendation that there be a policy and procedures on who has access to the grading systems, who can change grades, document the reasons for changing grades and the date of the change. And it was decided that we will see what is currently in place in regards to these procedures and then determine if the policy and procedures are necessary. Next discussion was on use of Academy Field. There was a condition at the main field, Academy Field, that the field was being used after hours. So we had discussion on closing the gates of the field at dusk. It was suggested that during the school year, they will be open from 3 p.m. to dusk. On weekends, they will be open from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. and during the summer from 8 a.m. till dusk. And signs will be posted on all fields. NYSBA policy 1000 community relations goals was discussed, and Mr. Forger will talk to the superintendent about what is appropriate and bring it back to the next meeting. Policy 1050 annual district election and budget was on for first reading tonight, and policy 1120 district records will be reviewed and brought back to the committee. Data privacy policy was approved tonight, 5500. We originally had about 20 items that were on the directory list regarding the students' information, and I'm happy to say we reduced that down to 4 for increased student privacy. Thank you. Next meeting is October 28th.
Thank you, Mr. Stridiron. Audit and Finance, Mr. Cappuccino.
We met on October 1st. Our main concern was the external audit report. There were some discrepancies, capital assets, extra classroom activities, and employee file maintenance. Those are all being addressed. We also addressed busing in there. That's the reason why we're looking for an outside consultant to pretty much give us a little steering on where we're going on that end of it there. Our next meeting is going to be this coming Thursday, and that pretty much sums it up. Mr. Levy did a good job as far as presenting the audit. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cappuccino. We're going to move on to agenda items. Deputy Superintendent, Mr. Forger, please.
Thank you, Madam President. My first item is the recommendations from the CSE, CPSE committees.
You've heard the resolution coming from the Deputy Superintendent. I'd like to entertain a motion.
Second.
Discussion, questions? Roll call, please.
Ms. Prakash?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Ms. Ambito?
Yes.
Mr. Copertino?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Before I request my next item, I just want to put a clarification out. The parent and community, family and community engagement department is now under the leadership of Mrs. Peterson. And Mrs. Peterson is working very closely with Mrs. Buttrick, and they're working as a team with their support person, Talisha Barron. And these three individuals in a very short period of time have connected and engaged with a variety of different organizations within the community. The core team, grant implementation, meeting with individual principals, really getting to know what are the needs of our families within our community, and partnering with them to address in a collaborative manner the needs of our student population. So this particular team in a very short period of time has done some amazing work, and will be doing more amazing work, and we'll be reporting out to you on a monthly basis what those particular events are and the direction that they're moving in. They're collaborating with pupil personnel, they're collaborating with exceptional learners, and they're collaborating with CNI. So over the next several months, you're going to be getting a monthly report talking about what that is, which leads me to an apology for the receipt of the family and community engagement report that you received late this afternoon. That's in reference to this particular resolution. So throwing out a pre-apology before we move into this resolution, but on a regular basis you'll get this information. So I now present to you a resolution to declare October 2015 Family Engagement Month.
Thank you, Mr. Forger. You've heard the resolution coming from the Deputy Superintendent. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Discussion, questions? Mr. Howard, then Mr. Stridiron.
Yes, and I appreciate the information that you just gave, Mr. Fortune, but when we got this, the agenda, and I saw that there was a resolution to declare October 15th, October 2015 family engagement, I was a little disturbed a little bit, because we're already in the middle of the month, number one, and I think that family engagement is something I think we should celebrate as a district. It should be something that's a continuum. And although we do want to acknowledge and make a resolution that we acknowledge a month, I want us to remember that there's something that we should be engaged in year-round. And if we do have a month, I would have loved to have had this last month, so something that we could celebrate. I think family engagement, because I knew nothing of the activities about family engagement for the month. And I was a little, when we got the information this afternoon, I was like, oh, all this is going on? And I knew nothing about it. And I think that that's one of the very important aspects of what we do as a district, trying to engage families. And we must continue to do it on a daily basis, monthly basis, and celebrate it and make the community feel wanted in our buildings and in our district. So.
Mr. Forget?
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with what you're saying. It should be every month. And one of the things that we're doing in the divisions that I work with, we're creating a website, as Mrs. Felice said, for CNI. We're also creating those websites where parents and families and community members have an opportunity to jump on and see what's happening, and we're going to highlight those. So we're moving in that direction. You're absolutely right. This resolution should have come in September to highlight the fact that October is Family and Community Engagement Month in a variety of districts across the state. So we'll be on that next year, I assure you.
Mr. Stritter?
Yes, Mr. Forget, when I got the list, I took a brief look through it, and I noticed that some schools had a lot of events planned, and others had one or none. What is the administration doing to help develop the family engagement programs at each individual school? Is there some resource that you can tap into?
Yes, there are a variety of resources, and Mrs. Buttrick and Mrs. Peterson are traveling from school to school, engaging in conversations with the principals, focusing on Tenet 6, which is family and community engagement, to make sure that we've got the expected state that we would like to see each of our schools with regards to Tenet 6. We're also reaching out, and Mrs. Peterson and Mrs. Buttrick will be attending a conference at Johns Hopkins, going back to the parent university model and beginning to implement those particular components. And we're also adopting a lot of the research from Karen Mapp. So we have the resources, it's just they're traveling from school to school to begin to engage those principals and the PTA and the PTO organizations on a regular basis. The other thing that they've been able to do is to work with reconnecting and re-engaging the special ed PTA. So an initial meeting was held last week where parents from the special education community attended, and they have a desire to get this particular organization up and running again in the district. Mr. Bear and his staff also attended that meeting. So I think we're moving in the right direction, and we are trying to connect with each of the principals to support them to do this in their building, as well as holding monthly meetings with PTA and PTO presidents.
Mr. Howard?
Yes, Mr. Forget, is this a typo, or is this a line in Tenet 6? Because it says family engagement, but we're talking about Tenet 6, which is family and community engagement.
Absolutely.
And the difference being, the family engagement, I understand we're in the building, but if it's family and community engagement, I think we need to be in the community. Let the community know that we're inviting them into our building, that we want them to come to our building, that their participation in what we do in our building, educating students, is something that we want them to be a part of. So, but if it's family engagement, it's different. But if it's family and community engagement, which aligns Tenet 6.
So let me clarify my response. I was asked by Mr. Stritter to respond to what are we doing to support each of the individual principals to begin activities. The work that we're doing is aligned with family and community engagement. The resolution that we're having a conversation around is identifying October as Parent Engagement Month.
So it's not family, okay, so it's, all right, I got it.
Mr. Stritter?
It says here October 15th. does this cover, yeah, I'd like it to cover every October, so that we don't have to vote on this every year. Is it, we're prepared in advance?
You can't do that by resolution. You can create a policy and then it would be authority, it would be reissued at your organization.
So bring up to policy, please. Mr.
But
Forgy.
I think if we go back to Mr. Howard's point, that this should have been a resolution that was brought forth in September that identifies the fact that this needs to be something we really start to focus on in October so that it can carry out throughout the entire year. I think that's the strategy, and that's the reason why most of the districts are identifying October as this particular month. So I guess I agree with everything that's being said, and we'll incorporate this into our movement forward.
Roll call, please. Oh, excuse me, wait 1 second, Mr. Copacino?
Just one question, is there some way that we can reach out to the PTOs or PTAs and get more involved in some schools like Temple Hill? Because at the last meeting, it was kind of disturbing, we weren't really represented by the community there at all. I mean, how many people were there? Probably 8 from the community?
So I have personally been in contact with the PTA president, or the PTO organization. Dr. Padilla has. We met with them individually. Mrs. Buttrick, I believe, and Mrs. Peterson are already scheduled for initial meetings to assist very specifically to move that school forward. Mrs. Peterson is working diligently identifying that as the high priority for that particular department.
Okay, roll call now.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Copacino?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
My next item is a resolution to authorize the board president to execute a consultant agreement with Dawn Stahl.
You've heard the resolution coming from the deputy superintendent. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Any discussion or questions? Mr. Stridiron?
What is Ms. Stoll going to be providing and to who?
She will be providing assistive technology evaluations when students are referred for an assistive technology eval as part of the CSE process.
Anyone else? Roll call, please.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Copacino?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
My next item is a resolution to authorize the board president to execute a consultant agreement with Alexis Bartoli.
You've heard a resolution coming from the deputy superintendent. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
Second.
Discussion or questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Copacino?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
That concludes my items, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Forgy. We're moving on to Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, Ms. Felice.
Thank you, Madam President. The first item for CNI this evening is a resolution to approve conference requests.
You've heard the resolution coming from the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction. I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or discussion? Mr. Copacino.
We had a question prior to this about the DTSDE regional training in there, as far as all of the teachers required to go there, or this could be something that they could turn to.
Mr. Forgy.
So, the DTSDE training that you're seeing on this evening's agenda is specifically in relation to Gidney Avenue Memorial School. Gidney Avenue Memorial School will be receiving a state-led review. Part of the state-led review this year, the state is requesting that the school leader and a team from the school participate in a session at the State Education Department so that they receive firsthand the expectations and the hope of the process to change the practice within the school. So it's really a requirement through the accountability system for this particular piece. The state has made some adjustments to the DTSDE trainings. They've set up 3 different trainings where we have to send representatives to go and be trained as lead reviewers. So Dr. Padilla has requested that I be the lead reviewer with Mr. Bear, Mrs. Hall, and Mr. Brown. So we will participate in the training this year. We have to take a certification test in the spring, and then we will be identified as lead reviewers for our school district. And hopefully we will no longer have to go to those particular sessions, but it is tied to the accountability system.
Any other questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Howard?
Wait,
Yes.
wait, excuse me, I'm sorry. I didn't see your hand until the last second.
The items for the social worker and the school psychologist, it says sub, no. Is that because we don't have anybody to replace it with, or timing of the conference?
They did not request one.
We have coverage in those schools during that time?
They did not request one, so I would think they have it covered.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I'm sorry, Mr. Clerk, roll call, please.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop? Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Copertino?
Yes.
Madam President.
Yes, sir.
Just point of information. I voted, but I should have held on, because some of these, well, he has, before he had his hand raised.
And I
was going to
can't
impact this
see
vote.
him. Yeah, I'm
So,
sorry.
point of information, can we find out what he was saying?
Would you like to tell us something?
Just point of clarification, we do not have subs in those schools for psychologists and social workers when they do go on conferences or are out, even if they're out 6.
But if something happens, someone else can come and cover.
That is correct. The assistant principal may have to contact someone from another school to come over during that particular piece. But we do not, as a practice, get substitutes for social workers or psychologists when they're either out for a conference or out sick.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Item B is a resolution to authorize the superintendent of schools to execute an agreement with Safari Montage.
You've heard the resolution coming from the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Questions or discussion? Mr. Stridiron?
Have we used this program in the past?
Yes, we currently use it.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Johnston?
Is there something special about the designation of the funding source as general fund dash tech? It just kind of struck me as something we haven't seen often.
So in technology, there are 2 types of funding sources. There's one for instructional resources and one for end user agreements. It's a general fund source, but specifically for technology. Okay, and so today you'll notice that we have a string of resolutions to spend down our technology funding.
Yeah, just to follow, I'm guessing that this has been budgeted for and there's a budget money going down for this point. Thank you.
Anyone else? Questions, comments? Mr. Clerk?
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Copertino?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Thank you. Resolution C is a resolution to authorize the superintendent of schools to execute an agreement with Explore Learning Reflex.
You've heard a resolution coming from the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Questions or discussion? Mr. Stridiron?
Same question, do we currently use this?
In some schools, and we've discovered that it has built great fluency in math for those particular students in those schools. Horizons being one of them, and Vales Gate the other.
Thank you.
Ms. Prokop?
Is that the only schools that this is for, or is this for everyone?
No, this is now to expand district-wide.
Okay, it's going to be expanded district-wide. Then will the schools that it's going to be expanded to, will those, is there a PD involved
Certainly.
for those?
By the vendor, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Copertino?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Item D is the resolution to authorize the superintendent of schools to execute an agreement with Atomic Learning.
You've heard the resolution coming from the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Go ahead.
Same question. Is it currently used in our district
It is
throughout?
throughout.
Thank you.
This is for renewal.
Any other questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Cupertino?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Beneo?
Yes.
Thank you. Item E is the resolution to authorize the superintendent of schools to purchase iReady math and reading software licenses.
You've heard the resolution coming from the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Cupertino?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Beneo?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Thank you. Item F is the resolution to authorize the superintendent of schools to execute an agreement with BrainPop.
You've heard the resolution coming from the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Discussion or questions? Thank you. Roll call, please.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Cupertino?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Beneo?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Thank you. Item G is the resolution to authorize the superintendent of schools to execute an agreement with Castle Learning.
You've heard the resolution coming from the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Mr. Clerk?
Mr. Cupertino?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Beneo?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Thank you. Item H is the resolution to authorize the superintendent of schools to execute an agreement with Class Link.
You've heard the resolution coming from the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Mr. Stridiron?
This looks like something we haven't used yet. Is this totally new?
You are correct. This is new. This allows for single sign-on if we have all these multiple apps. This will create a portal so that whenever anyone, a student or an adult in our district signs on, they don't have to have a multitude of passwords. Single sign-on will give them a dashboard of apps, and then they can continue to use them.
This is a one-year fee. Every year we have to spend 20.
That is correct. One additional piece I want to highlight to the board is the fact that this is not only a single sign-in opportunity, but it also helps us gauge the frequency of use of all of these other services that we're seeking to purchase. So we see, are we underutilizing? Are we maximizing the use of these other apps? And it can also inform impact of these resources on all that we do.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Beneo?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Cupertino?
Yes.
Thank you. Item I is the resolution to authorize the superintendent of schools to execute an agreement with Elant for the nurse aid training program.
You've heard the resolution coming from the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Beneo?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Cupertino?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Thank you. That concludes our items.
Thank you, Ms. Felice. We're going to move on to Assistant Superintendent for Finance, Mrs. Heslin.
Thank you, Madam President. The first item is a resolution to accept bills and reports.
You've heard the resolution coming from the Assistant Superintendent for Finance. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved. Second.
Questions or discussion? Yes.
I don't have it in front of me, but there was a adjustment to the budget on CNI of about $450,000. Could you just explain what that was? Thank you.
Yeah, so the biggest piece of that was moving money from teachers into CNI supervision, I believe. And that was something that was done just as a placeholder. Ultimately, those salaries will be charged to various special aid programs. Some of them are will go to Title I, some to IDEA. The federal funds, the special aid funds, don't follow the same fiscal year as the school district, so at the beginning of the year, we have to jockey some money around. So once those budgets are set up for the year, an adjustment will be made to charge those salaries to the special aid fund, and it'll go back into the original fund where it came from.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Clerk?
Ms. Beneo?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Strittmeyer?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Cupertino?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Item B is a resolution to declare furniture and equipment as surplus and obsolete and to authorize the disposal of the same.
You've heard the resolution coming from the Assistant Superintendent for Finance. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Mr. Clerk?
Ms. Prokop? Mr. Strittmeyer?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Cupertino?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Beneo?
Yes.
Item C is a resolution to accept the transportation bid.
You've heard the resolution coming from the Assistant Superintendent for Finance. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Mr. Cupertino?
Transportation, how many students are going to be involved in this?
I would ask, I'm not sure if Mr. Connolly has that information available or not.
Not off the top of my head.
Okay, we can certainly provide that to you for the Finance Committee on Thursday.
Okay, thank you. My other concern is, we have AIS that probably this year we're going to need money to sustain all the programs that are actually doing benefits for children in there. I think we really need to look at these things and see if we can partner with other districts to save this district money. I realize that we're getting 81% back, if I'm correct on that, from the state, but that's still 21% out of the district in there. So I mean, I really think we need to look at, other means in this aspect of saving money.
Mr. Strittmeyer?
I noticed on the bids, we only had a few companies responding, and what have we done in the last year to go out and expand that? Have we done anything different?
Not sure what we legally can do to try to expand the list of bidders.
I know there was discussion about putting out the bids on the web, things like that.
Right, so that actually the most recent bids, not transportation, but there's an RFP and also the snow plowing bids have been provided to Mr. Schindler, our webmaster, and he's going to be creating a page on the website for that.
We can't do that with transportation?
Sure, we can going forward, we just haven't created the page yet. But so these first two will be the first items out, and then any other items that we bid or go for requests for proposals will be on the website.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Strittmeyer?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Cupertino?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Beneo?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Before I read item D, I just want to make a short comment that the financial statements really are the culmination of a lot of hard work by everyone in the business office, and I want to extend my thanks to all of them, particularly to the district treasurer, Mr. Joe McKinstry, and also our grant specialist, Ms. Sonia Dixon, who worked very hard to make sure that these statements get pulled together. So item D is a resolution to accept the financial statements and supplementary information with the independent auditor's report for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2015.
You've heard the resolution coming from the Assistant Superintendent for Finance. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Any discussion or questions? Roll call, please.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Cupertino?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam President. That concludes my items.
Thank you, Mrs. Heslin. We're moving on to the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, Mrs. Leimer.
Thank you, Madam President. Before we begin the entire report for Human Resources, we're requesting that item Q1 be tabled.
You want to hold that and go through the first ones that you go through and then hold Q for when we get to Q?
Okay.
Thank you.
So on the Human Resources agenda, items A through M, we have on the professional side, classroom teaching appointments, other professional appointments, return from leave of absence, resignations, retirement. And on the civil service side, we have appointments, change of status, leave of absence, and a termination, resignation, a rescission of a retirement, and a former employee who passed away.
You've heard the resolution coming from the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources. Does any board member wish to separate out any of these items? I'd like to entertain a motion, please, then.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll up, Ms.
I
Prakash?
just have one question. On B2, I noticed we're the nurse for Sandoval. Is that full-time there? Because I know in the past we've had shared.
I'm not sure if it's full-time. I know we have a medically fragile child there that may require the nurse to be there full-time. Do you know it? Oh, Judy.
Yes, we do have a medically fragile student at San Miguel who has a IEP, classified student, that is written into the IEP that the student needs skilled nursing.
But that nurse, excuse me, Madam, but that nurse also is for the whole school, correct? Not just for that one student? That services
Yes.
the whole school?
Yes.
All right, therein lies my question too. I don't know if you can answer that, but I mean, San Miguel also has students from other districts.
I'm sorry?
San Miguel and some other private schools have students from other districts other than Newburgh. So if there's students from other districts, are they putting anything forth as far as monetarily to offset?
That's not a question for you. Okay. Ms. Heslin?
We can bill back to districts for health services
So I
that
think
provide.
we need to get, not just them, but also any of the schools that we service, nursing-wise and also AIS. If the students are from other districts, then I think we should get, we should get where they're from and go back.
Thank you, Ms. Prakash.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Clerk?
Mr. Cupertino?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Resolution N is to approve appointments for Title I AIS support services at non-public schools.
You've heard the resolution coming from the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So, second.
Thank you. Questions or discussion?
Same thing.
Just ditto for Ms. Prakash. Thank you. Anybody else? Roll call, please.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Cupertino?
Yes.
Resolution O is to approve additional 2015-2016 Schedule J appointments.
You've heard the resolution coming from the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources. I'd like to entertain a motion, please. discussion or questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Copertino?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Resolution P is to approve the 15-16 winter coaching appointments.
You've heard the resolution coming from the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources. Does any board member wish to separate out any of these items? I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
Second.
Discussion or questions? Roll call, please.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Menuda? Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron? Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Copertino?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Resolution Q is to approve the 15-16 spring coaching appointments. And at this point, Madam President, there's a request to table item number 1 under Resolution Q.
You've heard the amended resolution coming from the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources. First, I have to take just as is, so we'll start with that. You've heard the as-is resolution coming from the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources. I'd like to entertain a motion, please, on as-is, and then we will amend it.
Second.
Okay? Now, would anybody like to amend this to remove item number 1?
Yes.
Thank you. Can I have a second, please? Okay. Questions or discussion? Okay, I'd like a roll call on the amending it. So to take out item number 1.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Copertino?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes. Now, we'd like to roll call on the amended resolution.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Copertino?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Resolution R is to abolish a full-time senior custodian position and to create a full-time cleaner position.
You've heard the resolution coming from the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
Second.
Discussion or questions? Roll call, please.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Copertino?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Resolution S is to accept the revised job description for a principal typist and to create a full-time principal typist position.
You've heard the resolution coming from the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Copertino?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Resolution T is to approve the revised job description for the PE and Health Curriculum Chairperson position and to create the PE and Health Curriculum Chairperson position.
Okay, you've heard the resolution coming from the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources. I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Thank you. Questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Copertino?
Yes.
Resolution U is to approve the revised job description for math professional development and curriculum specialist, a teacher on special assignment, and create a full-time math professional development and curriculum specialist, teacher on special assignment position.
You've heard the resolution coming from the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Copertino?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Resolution B is to approve the job description for the science professional development and curriculum specialist, teacher on special assignment, and to create the full-time science professional development and curriculum specialist teacher on special assignment.
You've heard the resolution coming from the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes?
Ms. Wilcox?
Yes.
Mr. Strittmatter?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Copertino?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Resolution W is to approve the job description for the Newburgh Teacher Center Coordinator position, a teacher on special assignment, and to create the Newburgh Teacher Center Coordinator position, which is a teacher on special assignment.
You've heard the resolution coming from the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources. I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Strittmatter?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Copertino?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Resolution X is to approve a stipulation settlement agreement with an employee.
You've heard the resolution coming from the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Strittmatter?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Copertino?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Resolution Y is to approve the lead evaluators for classroom teachers and building principals.
You've heard the resolution coming from the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved. Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Copertino?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Strittmatter?
Yes.
Resolution Z is to ratify the provisions of the Memorandum of Agreement with the Newburgh Teachers Association, July 1st, 2014 through June 30th, 2017.
You've heard the resolution coming from the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Copertino?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Strittmatter?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Resolution AA is to approve the appointments for the local assistance plan team at Guinea Avenue School.
You've heard the resolution coming from the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Strittmatter?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Copertino?
Yes.
Resolution B is to approve the appointments for the local assistance plan team for Gardnertown School.
You've heard the resolution coming from the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Ms. Prokop.
I just have a question on the Garden Town. Why did we start at grade 3 through 5 and not 1, 2, K1, 2?
These positions were all posted, and I believe these are the folks that responded, and Ms. Torres believes she can accomplish the work that she needs to do with this local assistance plan with the individuals listed.
Anyone else? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Strittmatter?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Copertino?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Resolution CC, to accept the resignation from an employee.
You've heard the resolution coming from the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Discussion or questions? Roll call, please.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Strittmatter?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Copertino?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Resolution DD is to approve a teacher tenure recommendation.
You've heard the resolution coming from the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Copertino?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam President. That concludes my items.
Thank you, Mrs. Lima. We'd like to move on to the clerk of the board, Mr. McCoy.
Thank you, Madam President. I have the approval of the minutes from the September 21st, 2015 meeting.
You've heard this resolution coming from the clerk of the board. I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Copertino?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
That concludes my items, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy. We are now at the public, oh, yes?
I have one question. In the past, we had talked about having board meetings through different schools. Can we, again, pursue that? Because the fact that so people can realize what's going on at MFA. I mean, there's some great things going on there. North High going on, South High, Temple Hill. Maybe that will also help the community get involved, and especially this month, upcoming month, we could have a board meeting at another school.
We can talk about that with Dr. Padilla, and we'll research that, and we'll try to get that going. Thank you, Mr. Cappuccino. We're now at the public participation on non-agenda items of the meeting. Pursuant to board policy, public participation is limited to 5 minutes per speaker for a total of 30 minutes for all speakers. There's a timer in the front of the room that will keep track of your time. The timer will begin when you start to address the board. Please direct your comments to the entire board and not to individual members. If you have any questions regarding public comment, please refer to the public comment procedure form that is available by the sign-in sheet. Public participation is not a question and answer session with the board. If you would like an answer to your question, please submit your request in writing to the board clerk. We have no one on the list. Would anybody like to address the board on non-agenda items? Thank you. Oh, Mr. Johnston, go right ahead.
Hello, I'd like to speak, I can keep it to about 60 seconds, I think. I'd just like to acknowledge something that happened recently and give the district some feedback. As a parent, I visited 2 schools since our last board meeting, attended open houses, watched from classroom to classroom, and must have visited at least 12 different teachers. And I have to say that in thinking about it afterwards, the one thing that impressed me most was that several of the teachers demonstrated a great deal of enthusiasm for their work. This was very reassuring to see. Seeing the enthusiasm that the teachers had made me confident that they would be doing well with their students. And I think it's something that we don't often acknowledge or talk about it, but I think it's perhaps the most important thing that a teacher can bring to their work. So I would just like to say thank you for that. And thank you also to the staff for any amount of enthusiasm that you can muster for your work. I think it's very valuable and very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to address the board on non-agenda items? May I have a motion to adjourn this meeting? Thank you. Roll call, please.
Zambito? Mr. Copertino? Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop? Mr. Stridiron?
Good, just busy, but good. Very good. I love it.